welcome back to Betty. I'm your host, Cynthia Thompson, and do I have a treat for you today? Today, my guest is going to teach us all about tracing our roots. You know, there was a famous movie, I'm sure we all saw it, Roots, where Alex Haley went back and found who his forefathers were, all the way back to Africa. Well, do you know that more and more people are going about tracing their roots to see where they came from? And her name is Iris Chandler. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
You know, I was so excited when I got you on my show because I had been trying for a while. I'm so glad you had a chance to come and visit us. But before we even get started, what exactly is genealogy?
Genealogy. Genealogy is the system people use to determine the people they're related to. You know, the parents, grandparents, cousins, and first cousin, second cousin, first cousin removed. It goes on and on. But that's the basic premise for genealogy, determining who you are related to. Now, I'll go a little further and tell you that family history is the story of the lives of these people.
So, with genealogy, how does a person even start to retracing their roots or seeing who their parents' were?
As a part of comprehensive genealogy services, that is one of our prime programs teaching you how to get started. You can go to our website, and we do have what we call a beginner's kit that you can order. And that will give you your basics. And your very basics is to start with yourself. And you fill out the information and go backwards with yourself and your parents. That would be your mother, father, their parents. And then you find these people. You, in answering information for that, that determines what you have and what you need to find. Yes. One of the additional resources would be looking in your home for things like in your Bibles, birth certificates, death certificates, and just start with yourself and do this for each family member.
So if I want to start it, and I have to tell you, I've already started mine. I've gone back 7 generations, and it's so exciting when I find someone new in my family. Are there some websites people can go to in order to do this?
Yes. You have Ancestry.com. This is a pay program, but it's very thorough. You also have the Family Research, which is part of Latter-day Saints. And however, they have some basic information for you that is free. And going into their sites in town, then you sit down and you can order additional information from their main area in Salt Lake. One great resource, of course, is our main library. On the 3rd floor, you have the Carolina Room. So you have census records, different other resources about the histories of counties, states, and tax records. All of these things are sources that you want to use in locating your families and how their lives traced in terms of where they lived and the things that happened to them.
And the Carolina Room, is that only for your ancestors that lived in North Carolina?
No. They have the material for the entire country.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Is that in all the libraries or
No.
just the library here in Charlotte?
It is. You have that in libraries all over the country and in the different states. But here in Charlotte, you have the resource of the Carolina Room, which has the material for the entire country, all the different states. Now, you have other cities, counties, they have, certain information, but I can assure you the Carolina Room is an excellent source. It takes a little more work because when you go in, you sit down, you really have to look, whereas Ancestry and some of these, they will catalog a lot of things for you, whereas in the library, you're going to have to do a lot of that for yourself.
So why do you think all of a sudden there's an interest in people doing their genealogy?
I'm sure you can attribute the different programs that have come up,
Right.
which has sparked an interest. And of course, I think with African Americans, we all talk about the Alex Haley roots,
Right.
okay? And people, you had some people who have been interested and have information, and others who really didn't know what they could or couldn't find.
Uh-huh.
So families have traditions, and you know, where do these traditions come from?
Right.
Without the research, you don't know.
Uh-huh.
So you've had a lot of people who have been sparked through different circumstances,
Uh-huh.
and it's a growing interest.
Uh-huh. You know, I have found, tracing my own roots, that a lot of my family members, they lived near each other. And that's how, you know, like, they were all farmers, of course, very, very poor. And they all lived in the same neighborhood, and they married each other. And that's how they started the family tree. Do you find that back in, I guess, the early 1900s, that's how black people lived or met and married?
Yes, absolutely. 1870 census records show this is the first time that African Americans were actually listed
Oh, really?
like all other citizens.
Uh-huh.
Now, prior to 1870 and during slavery, the African American was an enslaved property.
Uh-huh.
Therefore, you did not have them listed by name in places that the Caucasians did.
Uh-huh.
So when you take a look of, say, 1870, 1880, you begin to find these records. And like you were saying, the majority of our people at the time were farmers.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, you lived in neighborhoods with other relatives.
Uh-huh.
And so, yeah, your confinement or socializing or not blood relations, but your social relations were confined to those areas. After all, it wasn't like walking out the front door and your neighbor was next door.
That's true, too.
Yes.
They all didn't have cars either.
No, no. And so there are a lot of things that attributed to where you were, who you knew. And the church, of course, was the great center because people, you get up on Sunday mornings to go to church, and if you had a horse and buggy, you know, you spent the day there.
Really?
Oh, yeah, Sundays were a big day, you know, after all of the farming and working and getting prepared on weekends to be in church. And church service was, you know, hey, all of us have those long days in church.
So that's where it started.
Yes, absolutely. You know.
So the church records, can you look at church records for information?
There are some church records. You will find that a lot of the enslaved persons' records will be a lot more thorough in white churches. We were taken to church with them.
Oh, really?
Yes, and we were allowed to join the churches, and whatever, if we were sold off or died or whatever, those records are there. You know, some of them are not as open to us, and there are others that are very thorough. So that's a source. That's a source for us. But now, of course, you have to do, again, doing your research, going backwards, then you have to determine who the owner was. And then, you know, looking into their church records. My family came out of Lincoln, Georgia. And the church there was Goshen Baptist Church. The records show all types of activity, them having their own revivals, although they were being seen over by an overseer, baptisms, sale of, even being permitted to marry, although it meant nothing if they were going to be sold.
So there aren't any marriage records for that time period?
No, not specifically. The marriage records that I found in my family started in 1869. But, of course, you had the families together long before that. But the legal marriage records started in 1869.
Okay, so you've mentioned quite a few documents that you can find to find out who your ancestors are. Census, the family Bible, some church records.
Yes.
Is there anything else I'm missing here?
Oh, you have armed services records,
Huh.
school records.
Uh-huh.
Once upon a time, school stopped at 11th grade.
Hmm.
Yeah. And, and of course, plowing season, as with them being farmers,
Uh-huh.
children went to school for, 3 or 4 months because they had to go into fields.
Uh-huh.
So there are records of that type, schools, the churches. African-American churches, the records, although they're not as thorough, you can find some
Uh-huh.
materials that will help you. And in addition to that, there are a long list of things that you can use to trace your families.
Uh-huh.
This is one of the things that we teach.
Uh-huh.
And every year, after the Martin Luther King holiday,
Uh-huh.
and by the end of February, we have these classes every Tuesday.
Huh.
Yeah. So, and of course, it is on a Tuesday night, 2 hours.
Uh-huh.
And we have the beginner and intermediate levels,
Uh-huh.
because some people have done quite a bit of work and they need advanced training as opposed to beginning levels.
Uh-huh.
So, but that is a fun thing, and it's a hands-on thing because we do pull in ancestry. So not only are you learning how to do this, but then you have an opportunity actually
To do it.
to do it.
Take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to talk more about the comprehensive genealogical services.
All right.
Okay?
Charlotte Rescue Mission is a nonprofit, faith-based Christian organization designed to help homeless and addicted men and women. We provide our clients food, shelter, and clothing free of charge. These men and women are facing a crisis of addiction and a life lived on the streets. We're looking for volunteers to join our team at Charlotte Rescue Mission. For more information how you can help us, contact us at 704-333-HOPE or visit us on the web, charlotterescuemission.org.
Welcome back to Better You. I'm your host, Cynthia Thompson, and I'm here with Miss Chandler. She's a part of the CGS, and we've been talking about tracing your roots, genealogy, how you can find information about the people that were here before you. Now, before we went on break, I said we were going to come back and talk about the CGS. Now, what exactly is the CGS? We've been talking about it some.
Okay. Comprehensive Genealogical Services Incorporated is a nonprofit incorporation, educational nonprofit. And also our purpose is to teach people to research their family heritage. And in addition to that, our second program is to teach people to do family reunions. Yes, there's a lot to putting together family reunions so that your family enjoys it, as well as it not being such great stress on the person who takes the brunt of the experience. And so that conference for us is a one-day program. And of course, I mentioned before that our lessons in genealogy, of course, run 5 days or 6, and it's Tuesday, starts the Tuesday after the Martin Luther King holiday and through the end of February. So now, in addition to that, we have a cemetery committee.
A cemetery committee?
Yes, we research the burial places for those persons who were enslaved. Many of them are lost in terms of people knowing exactly what happened, where they are. You do not, in an enslaved cemetery, you do not have headstones like we have today.
What do they have?
Rocks. You will have a depression, sort of trough-like. They will have large rocks at the head and a small grouping of rocks at the foot to determine, so you know which way they're buried east to west. So that sort of biblical feeling of rising to the east to see the Lord on the day of returning.
Okay.
And so many of them were buried in churchyards with their owners. Others were buried on properties where they lived and worked.
Wait a minute. They were buried where their owners were buried too?
Some of them, yes.
Huh.
You will find that a lot of the churches long before Revolutionary War, before the Civil War, during that time, some people had as many as 1 or 3 persons who were helping them. Others had as many as 20 or 50, and even larger, depending on what properties they owned, how large an operation they had, and how much help they needed. So that determined a lot in terms of where they were buried. And of course, like I said, some of the denominations, Methodists especially, the church members had their own plots in the churchyard. Therefore, they would bury their enslaved people there as well. You've got a lot of the churches here, and I can call them what they call the Seven Sisters, and they were referred to that because they were given the land grants by King George. And this is before the Revolutionary War. And you had burials where we were separated. They are buried behind the main cemeteries without any designation.
So no markings or
No
anything?
markings, no. You have some of the churches now who have done some research on their own history, have gone back and cleaned up the yards and actually put out crosses and things, to designate these people. And some who have records, and at this point it's just a research, But our particular program is to help with that in the sense of research and determining where these burials are, who they belong to. And to this point, we have discovered quite a few here in Mecklenburg County.
Oh, really? How many?
There are 100 sites that we have right now. And they're on our website. You can go and look on the website, and it'll tell you where they are, whether they're restricted or not. If it's restricted, you cannot go into it. And if not, you can walk up and take a look at what's there.
I know my grandmother went to a church here in Mecklenburg County, Smithfield. Yeah, that's the name of it. Over by Quail Hollow Junior High School, over in that area. And I went there and saw where she went to church when she was a little girl.
Right. You've got a lot of areas. And of course, when we are researching this, it's not just spotting it. We have to definitely determine that it is, and of course, determining what was there at that time. Because, every sand pebble in the world was once something else.
Yes, this is
And
true.
yes, and in addition to that, all the construction and redesigning in towns, it is important that you know this, because if you're going to build a highway or a condominium or a mall or anything else, you would like to think that having this information would save your digging up someone or... Yes.
So what else do you all do with the slaves that have been buried?
Other than designating this and providing it to our government officials and to the libraries, we have a young lady who's a professor at Winthrop University, and she's a bioanthropologist. And it has been very fortunate for us that several of the churches have given permission to open graves and determine who's there.
Open the graves?
Yes.
Of slaves, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Right.
So what are some things that you found from opening these graves?
It is, and the comparison would be the same as when the Egyptian find mummies, and you determine how that person lived, what they died of, was it injury, was it illness, the inside of the interment, the dirt and information tells you a lot about what was going on at the time, the weather. Like, we're having very bad weather here now. This heat is unreal. But, 100 years from now, someone opened a grave, they can determine that and know that that was happening. And famine, all the kinds of things that were going on, those types of research will give you this information. They are buried sometimes, many times, with their possessions. And that would be beads in the hair, belts, things that belong to them. Those things are still there, and you can say yes. because after all, certain members of African tribes, what have you, had certain designations, certain ways they looked. So if they were buried with things that identified them like this, it's, you know, sometimes still there for you to see.
Are you able to do any DNA on those folks
Yes,
that you dig up?
it depends on what you find in the grave. There is no definite or definitive saying, well, we're going to open this and find this, this, and this. It depends on the age of the grave and what has happened. And usually, if these graves are 200 years old, sometimes you may find hair, which can give you some.
Really?
Yes, sometimes you do that, or again, like I said, whether it's a belt or a brooch that goes in the hair, or, you know, buttons, these types of things. But now, as far as DNA, I would think with hair and with bone, depending on how
old it
good,
is.
yes, it will determine. So, and of course, there are a lot of things that determine too how you approach that. Public cemeteries like your cemeteries out now have certain laws. The state have certain laws, whereas in some of our older churches who have been in existence for, you know, a couple of hundred years or better, they can determine some things and allow certain things that, on the flip side of government, it's a different matter of what they will allow or what.
You know, I want to ask you one last question because we're almost out of time, and I have so many questions I want to ask you. You have got to stay over so I can talk to you some more. But anyway, why did you start doing this?
Well, to be perfectly honest, I guess always I've had a great interest in history. And I find that, you know, I can assure you, most children will tell you, they can give you dates for, you know, this war, that war, you know, first presidents, this, but it doesn't have the meaning to it when they really do not understand that these lives mean and held so much. Well, you know, in school, history has always been fascinating. And after I was older, things that my grandparents would say to me didn't mean a lot at first. But then when I began to spend summers and watch things that were different from what I had here, it just, as I say, took hold. So, in researching that and getting to know people, it is absolutely fascinating.
And so if someone wanted to contact you or wanted to look at your website, what's your website address again?
The website is cgsweb.org.
I want to thank you again for coming to visit with me and to talk about this. I have a lot more questions for you, so you cannot get up. And I want to thank each and every one of my viewers for joining me today. I hope you all learned a lot, and I hope that this will encourage you to go out and trace your roots too, to see where you came from, to see why you look the way you look and why you do the things you do. And do continue to watch my show, Better You, here on Public Access 21 every Wednesday at 6 p.m.